Good morning, everybody. My name is Matthew Baldwin. I'm from the European Commission. I'm proud to be the mission manager for the 100 Climate Neutral and Smart Cities mission. I can't tell you how delighted I am to be with you today for the launch of our cities mission. It's the most exciting project I've worked with in my entire working career in the European Commission. It's exciting because we have the chance here, colleagues, to start work to make a huge contribution to the European Green Deal. It's exciting simply because working with the cities gives me this huge sense of energy and commitment every single day. And all of those in the cities, you know that because you have the ambition. It seems that you guys are pretty excited too, because at the last count, I think we have 1,363 people signed up for this launch, which is itself extremely exciting. And there are certain consequences of that. It means we've had to move from a classical WebEx to WebEx streaming. We are streaming this session. The session is being recorded. It means there's a little bit of a loss in our interactivity. You may still ask questions. Indeed, you can ask questions, I'm told, as of now. And it's done via Slido, but you don't have to rush off and load the app on your smartphone. The link is displayed. You can see it on the streaming page. I'm hearing there's no sound. That's always a teething problem. Can you hear me now? Could someone give me a thumbs up? Okay. There's sound on our internal link. I don't know if there's sound on the streaming. But I shall just plow on, I think. If you want to ask a question, you can do so automatically on the streaming page. You just indicate your name if you wish, or you can be anonymous. You ask your question. If that still doesn't work, please go to www.slido.com, enter the code #MissionCities, which I hope you'll all get very used to using. That'll be our social media hashtag. Once again, #MissionCities, and then you'll be able to pose your question. Because it's Slido, you can also, if you wish, vote on the importance of other people's questions. So if you give a positive vote to somebody else's question you see there, we will again bring it up the priority list and we can concentrate on the questions that most people are finding important. In any case, we will reply to all questions that we don't have time to answer in this session. We'll reply in writing and we'll publish the replies on our website. In addition, you can pose questions on our mailbox, and I'll give you that at the end. If you have a question for the European Commission, or if you have a question for the NetZeroCities Consortium, more on that in a moment, you can also send a question directly to them. Once again, the session is being recorded for those who can't participate today. And I think this will be the first of several sessions. Depending on how it all goes today and the feedback we get, we may do more and possibly more targeted events to pick up specific aspects of the mission. The last point I wanted to make in terms of housekeeping is to remind you that in the link that you received to confirm your attendance, you received an email, you can access our implementation plan that'll set out in a lot of detail how we propose to implement this mission. It sets out the Commission communication on all the 5 missions that we've launched this week, and you'll hear more about that in a moment from Rosalinda, and it also includes a very basic fact sheet. So there's some written materials already out there. In this morning's session, and we're going to try to be tight and well-structured, you're going to hear in just a moment from my esteemed colleague and Deputy Mission Manager, Rosalind van der Vlies, on what the missions are, the concept, and why we're doing them and how they're going to work. You're going to hear from Hanna Gronkiewicz-Waltz, who has been the chair of our mission board. This is a group of wonderful experts who 3 years ago began the quest to look at how we might do 100 climate neutral cities, and their report is the basis to our work. Then I will try to set out for you the concrete elements of the mission. You'll then hear from Thomas Osdoba, who is from the EIC Climate Kick, who is the coordinator of the NetZeroCities project, And he's going to explain how they're going to work with us, how they're going to work with you, the cities, and to build a mission platform to help steer cities through this process. And then finally, we're going to hear from Dirk Beckers, Director of the European Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency, who's going to say a brief word about all the tremendous work that they've been doing to help us get off the ground and implement this mission. Once again, it's with huge excitement that I'm with you today. I do hope that you can hear us via streaming, but in the meantime, I'm very pleased now. I gather you can, that's great. I'm very pleased now to give the floor to Rosalinde van der Vliet. Rosalind, over to you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, for this really great opening. And it's a real pleasure for me to be here as well. I share your excitement. I think this is really absolutely a moment we have been waiting for many years. I remember when we started discussing this concept of missions as a novelty of the Horizon Europe Framework Programme. The basic idea behind is that we wanted to really engage and involve our citizens much more closely in research and innovation activities. That was the starting point for all the missions. And that's when we started, with numerous stakeholder consultations. We had citizens engagement events. We had countless discussions with cities, regions, member states. And of course, we have had the invaluable mission board as a sounding board in order to shape the mission. So I would like to start by thanking everybody for all the contributions that we received in the past years to really shape the mission, because today I think with confidence we can say that we are in great shape, and this is really thanks to the contributions of all of you. So my second key point is that with the missions in Horizon Europe, we started a new way of working. And this new way of working is that for the missions, we started actually with the final destination in mind. Where do we want to be in 2030? And having this very clear and common destination will really help to shape the mission and also to engage a wide range of citizens and stakeholders. So the concept is the same for all the missions. All the missions have a very clear final destination for 2030. The second thing there is that we will also have a bottom-up approach. So we will really listen to the needs of the individual cities in shaping the mission, and the other missions will do the same. And when we move to the implementation of the missions, a key component of all 5 missions is really this continuous engagement of citizens and stakeholders. The third key point that I want to make is that, of course, the missions are launched as part of the Horizon Europe Framework Programme. They are rooted in research and innovation, but it's very clear that none of the missions will be succeeding if we only focus on research and innovation. All the missions will need to make sure that we connect the dots between different programs, moving from research and innovation to the final deployment of solutions, and then making sure that these solutions are actually implemented on the ground. For the cities mission, we have already a wide range of programs and support available for the cities, and the cities mission will be a unique opportunity to connect the dots between the various programs, be it cohesion policy, urban policies. And I think the mission is not there to replace any of the existing programs, but the unique opportunity to make sure that all the support schemes that are out there are better reinforcing each other and working better in synergy. Finally, I wanted to make a last point on the financing. Horizon Europe will make available more than 2 billion euros for the missions in general, and for the cities mission, we will have more than 300 million euros until 2023. But of course, the money from Horizon Europe alone will not be enough to deliver on our ambitious challenges. So we are very committed to mobilize other EU funds that will help us to move from research and innovation to the deployment of solutions. We are committed to work with the European Investment Bank, private investors, and of course, we also expect member states to also financially support the mission. We can say that we have really reached a milestone today with the launch of the 5 missions, and it's a huge opportunity for the European Union. It's also a huge challenge, but I'm convinced that with the enthusiasm and the inspiration that you all have been given in the run-up to this launch, we will together be able to make a difference, and we are on a very clear path to 2030. So I'm very excited to learn more about also the details of the mission and the questions and reactions that you all have. I will stop here. Back to you, Matthew.
Thank you, Rosalinda. That was a wonderful introduction, very well put, if I may say. And it's a pleasure to work with you and the entire team we have here in the Commission. But there are so many layers to this onion. I won't try to thank all of you because you know who you are, both inside the Commission and outside. The tremendous work that's already been done is really inspirational. And that leads me perfectly to Hanna, the chairwoman of our mission board, who's done such a wonderful job in steering the report. We're very proud to have you with us, Hanna. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I should say on behalf of the mission of the board that we are extremely happy that this moment just has come, because we were waiting patiently for this moment. We are working for almost 1.5 years for our report, and now we have something concrete, which is the implementation plan. I would like to highlight only a few points. First of all, what is the difference between the previous funded project for the cities to our mission? The first have considered, as a former mayor, I know about it, the first have considered a variety of objectives, such as improving the transport vehicles, building clean facilities. Now, our mission, we have only one goal, and it's a common goal for at least 100 cities, to achieve climate neutrality in 100 European smart cities till 2030. Each project should aim at achieving this goal by means of innovative methods, and this should be achieved by pooling resources of different origin, private, as it was already mentioned by Rosalinda, private, public, credits, grants, different origin of resources. And we believe that this goal will be reached in a large area of at least 100 European cities. I don't want to mention, because it is in our report and it's in the implementation plan, that cities are the main area where is, of course, the pollution and the other problems with the climate issue. Our mission is, I hope, very helpful to the main project of the EU, which is Green Deal. What will happen in the cities should help all other actors to mobilize and show that the goals set out in the Green Deal are really realistic and feasible. If we can deliver in 8 years, I hope, whole Europe can deliver in the following 20 years. So why 100 cities? 100 cities is quite a lot of cities, because to build a critical mass that will disseminate all over the EU and create a gravity for all the rest cities, so nobody is left behind. I should say that the mission board assesses the implementation plan very consistent with our ideas contained in the report and technically feasible. I can say that we recognize our report in the implementation plan. So I would like to thank to the team which was working on this, because it's really, I would say, obvious fidelity to our report, which is not so easy to do. Of course, all of us, especially the managers, will be ready to answer for different questions. But I think that many issues will be addressed in course of the implementation, because there is a new approach to the purpose and the direction in which cities should develop. It demands the openness from the cities, but as well from the Commission. Now let us start working. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Hanna, for those extremely kind words. It's a classic thing to say that we couldn't be here without you, but we could not be here without you. Existentially, we would not be without you. And I want to once again thank you and all the other members of the board past and present, who I know are on this call, and thank you for everything you've done. It's a perfect link to start. As you said, we now need to start work, and I now want to take you through some of the mechanics of how we propose to carry out the mission for 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2030. Once again, to remind you, you have a link to our implementation report, implementation plan, to the Commission communication, and of course to the fact sheet. We will also put on the same link to our website, when I finish speaking, the full pack of these slides. So if you miss any of the details, in fact, we'll put in more slides, you will get also be able the chance to have a look at these slides and review them yourselves carefully. First slide, please. And to the next slide, please. So, I mean, Hanna, you've already begun to address this question, but I just thought it'd be worth reminding ourselves briefly of the facts, even though many of you, everyone I'm sure on this call knows already, 75% of the citizens in the EU live in cities. That's projected to increase to around 85% by 2050. And that's on just 4% of the European landmass. More than 65% of energy consumption comes from cities. And if we look at the global figure, more than 70% of total carbon dioxide emissions come from cities. So cities are right at the heart of this problem we call climate change. And of course, cities are suffering not just from the greenhouse gases, but they're suffering from the more tangible impacts: air and noise pollution, congestion, dangerous roads. Cities are facing increasing problems, not just related to greenhouse gases. And the cities are also the place where we can implement the European Green Deal at local level. Cities are where policies meet people. I hope we have some mayors or deputy mayors or politicians, local politicians on the call, but you know so much better than me when you talk to your citizens about whether it's time for them to refurbish their building and make it climate neutral, or the people who want to carry on using their cars to take their kids to work. These are the issues which impact directly on cities and on citizens. And if we can tackle these problems locally in cities, we can tackle them everywhere. And it also underlines what Rosalind was saying about the essential, the vital nature of citizens' engagement. And last but not least, why cities? Because you've got the ambitions to go further. You have the capacity to go further. But at the same time, we need this mission because so far, relatively few of you have declared readiness to be climate neutral by 2030. There's no criticism in that. It's a tough challenge, as you know, to be climate neutral by 2030. You face a number of barriers, a number of difficulties in getting there. What this mission is fundamentally about is being your partner, helping you to address the barriers that you face. Next slide, please. So to boil it all down to the essentials, we have two objectives in this mission. Firstly, we want to deliver at least 100 climate neutral and smart European cities by 2030. As Hanna reminds us, that's in 8 years' time. But secondly, therefore, we're not stopping there. We want to ensure that these cities act as experimentation and innovation hubs, if you like, living labs, so that we can put all cities in a position to become climate neutral by 2050. Let's remind ourselves, as a continent, we have to be there by 2050. Cities can lead the way. Cities can be in the vanguard. And once again, let's remind ourselves that the actions to deliver climate neutrality will bring massive, in fact, more visible co-benefits: the better air quality, the less road congestion, more livable, more lovable spaces in our cities. Next slide, please. This is a schema of how you can look at the main elements of the mission, and you'll be hearing about these today. We've highlighted in green the principal ones that we really want to hammer home today, but you'll see more information on all of these points in the full deck of slides, and of course, set out in a lot more detail in the implementation plan, again, which you all should have a link to. Next slide, please. So let's begin with the mission platform. We have a wonderful coincidence of dates in that the mission platform will be run by the NetZeroCities consortium. You'll hear in a moment from Thomas Osdoba. And they start work today. Legally, they come into existence today on the 1st of October. So that's a wonderful coincidence. The mission platform will be your go-to partners for the co-creation of what we're calling climate city contracts. And what does co-creation mean? It means direct, hands-on working with citizens, with stakeholders, with authorities, whether local, regional, or national. Citizens have to feel that this mission is being done with them, not to them. As I think the original mission board report said, by and with the people. It sometimes sounds like a cliche, but we mean it. It's the only way we're going to make this work. As part of the Climate City contracts and the preparation of that work, the mission platform will help cities come forward with tailor-made investment plans, with detailed project preparation, including things like projects financed by the European Investment Bank, and financial advice, how to tap into the many billions and trillions of euros that are out there to support cities in this work. And of course, also, as Rosalind has said, the research and innovation component will be constant, and it's at the heart of this mission. And the mission platform will also be there for launching pilots, demonstrators, launching calls in the coming years for proposals for these large-scale pilots to lead in lead cities that will twin with and mentor other cities in terms of moving forward, whether it's in urban mobility or in energy production, distribution, and efficiency, or whether it's in waste management or water management, all the different aspects that we know cities are going to have to tackle to become climate neutral. Next slide, please. And then let's zoom in on this issue of climate city contracts. Some people say to me, contract's a big word. Does this imply some sort of legally binding nature or a business arrangement? We think the nature of a contract is the right word to use, but let me explain a little bit more of what it means. The contract will be a tailor-made plan, essentially done by the city, but not the city in isolation. The city, once again, supported by the mission platform, working with a whole range of actors. So it's the city's own plan about how to reach climate neutrality. Once again, it won't be a legally binding contract. We'd like you to understand it more as a memorandum of understanding. This is where the city sets out how it's going to get there. And once again, it will be co-created with the involvement of, we hope, national authorities, regions, and all local stakeholders. And once again, I keep banging this point that it's so essential, including the citizens and local economic actors. If you look at the stories of cities, including just down the road in Leuven, which has this amazing Leuven by 2030 plan, they've baked in this engagement with citizens, with local banks, because they discovered what works. That's the way in which they can really develop viable plans to develop climate neutrality. And in doing this, and again, Leuven's a good example, they've had to be innovative in their city governance. This word holistic, which we perhaps use too much these days, but covering the whole city, developing a program for climate neutrality, not just individual projects run by the mobility department or the energy department. The city has to embrace this whole notion of climate neutrality and the co-benefits it brings as one concept. And of course, linked to that once again is this investment plan, the combination of public finance, starting with the Horizon Europe money, which Rosalinda mentioned, more than 300 million euros, but building out from that other sources of European finance, we have other sources of national finance as well. And then, of course, last but not least, monitoring and reporting. And we very much hope that these climate city contracts will be signed by the mayor or the equivalent, it depends on how the city is managed, because that's where the political commitment, this political determination can be best expressed. And we envisage a beautiful ceremony witnessed by the Commission and others, perhaps the national governments and others who are, if you like, endorsing the plans in an informal way of what the city is going to be setting forth. So this is the core part of the process. Now let me explain a little bit about or just touch on the R&I content in the next slide, please. I mean, again, I touched on it already, but it's so central to the mission. I just wanted to give you an overview of, for people to say, so where's the R&I content? Well, first of all, we will have a portfolio of R&I activities targeting cities and communities. It's launched in the Horizon Europe work program for mission. People in this room have been working crazily all summer on preparing this Horizon Europe work program. It's on track for the end of 2021. And you'll see there a substantial part of the money we're bringing to the table will be already embedded in the work program for 2021. And we're very happy in questions to give you more detail, if you wish, on the precise projects we're launching. The goal, of course, in all of this is to develop capacity and use cities to showcase the possibilities for scaling up and replicating the actions. The projects we want to undertake under the Horizon Europe work program will be directly pivotal to enabling future cities to take this on. And last but not least, again, to pick up what Rosalind was saying, we want this to be very much complementarity and synergistic with ongoing and upcoming initiatives. For example, the new Horizon Europe partnership, such as the Driving Europe Transition. Last but not least, I must use a key word or three key words, the new European Bauhaus. You will have heard so much about this as we move forward. We'll provide more information, but this is an incredibly exciting way of bringing together sustainability, aesthetics, and accessibility. And cities, again, are the natural partner for the new European Bauhaus initiative, which, as you know, is very strongly supported herself by President Ursula von der Leyen. Next slide, please. And so we come to the funding and financing. Again, it's such an important point. Rosalinda has touched on it. We want to set it out for you here. Again, support can be expected to flow for the cities involved from a number of different funding programs. I don't want cities to feel that I've got a big checkbook here and I'm about to send you all a check for your interest in the mission. That's certainly not, I think, the way to see the Horizon Europe program. It's about engaging in the different R&I projects, learning from them, and of course there will be substantial funding attached to those projects. Secondly, we very much hope to see funding emerge from other sources inside the European Union, from the structural funds, from the new Recovery and Resilience Facility, where member states have already outlined plans, for example, on energy efficiency, on urban mobility, which will be directly relevant to cities. And cities, my message to you is go out there and get your hands on these sums of money. But also, if, I mentioned the structural funds, if you look at the pattern of how that's going to work in the future, increasingly money is going to flow for climate change, money is going to flow also directly for cities from those processes. There are many other Commission programs, such as the Connecting Europe facility, which you can also expect to tap into. Secondly, we hope to see a strong cooperation with the European Investment Bank Group and with national and regional promotional institutions. Things like a revamped and boosted financial advisory, possibly a new blending facility, new funds coming from the mission, even for projects such as Eleanor, which many of you have already used to great effect for individual projects. But last but not least, and to take the last 2 points on this slide together, the vast majority of the money to support climate neutrality in cities is going to come from the private sector. That's not the Commission passing the buck onto others. It reflects the reality that the sums of money needed are going to vastly outweigh the money that could come from EU or national funding programs. And there is a lot of money out there. The study by Material Economics estimated only 17% of the funds would come from cities themselves. The others will come from private investors, from individuals, private companies, commercial banks, themselves launching green bonds. And this is an exciting new growth area. If you just take a look at the EU Sustainable Finance Agenda, and perhaps we should table some links in our webpage so that you can have a look at those papers, you see there new opportunities to encourage investors to invest locally. What better way of citizens' engagement is than for citizens to be investing in their own climate neutral futures? You'll hear much more about that in the context of the mission platform. We've got real tremendous climate finance experts working in that program, and they'll be ready to work with you in developing your contracts. Next slide, please. Well, we thought it'd be useful now to anticipate some of the questions that we've had and to try to set out already for you some of the answers. There'll be many other questions and we need to provide good answers. Next slide, please. So the first question that we hear many, many times is who can apply? It's all set out in the implementation plan, but very briefly, we're setting the threshold at entities of more than 50,000 inhabitants We're particularly encouraging the participation of cities with at least 100,000 inhabitants, but don't be put off if you only have 60,000 people. The reason we're stressing that is because, of course, the bigger the city, the greater the contribution to the European Green Deal. But again, we're looking for learning experiences at different sizes of city. We're also very keen to make sure that the mission looks like the European Union. And so we've come with a particular provision for entities or cities from member states who have 5 or less cities of more than 100,000 population. We will then apply a lower threshold of just 10,000 inhabitants. So for example, Cyprus would thereby be able to ensure that it has cities that are eligible for the mission. And an important point, a question that I'm asked a lot is, does the whole city need to commit? The default would be yes. If Brussels decides to apply, we would look to the city of Brussels, the region of Brussels, strictly speaking, to commit the whole city to become climate neutral. But if you wish, and if you can duly justify it, a city may propose to exclude one or more emission sources. In this case, we will ask the city to commit to a strategy, to a timetable for climate neutrality for all these other districts, these other emission sources, as soon as possible. That will be part of the process. And we think that's a fair way to make sure that we're not excluding cities who can't commit the whole city upfront, but at the same time, we also want to make as much progress as possible, including as much of the individual cities as possible. Next slide, please. Another question I get a lot is, what does climate neutrality actually mean for cities? How are we going to measure it? Well, the good news is we're not proposing, because none of us here in this room at least are climate scientists, we're not going to try to come up with a new definition. We will use the definitions of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the famous IPCC, and we will apply this in the urban context. And we're not the first to do this. A number of other organizations have been trying to measure and capture, of course, emissions reductions. So essentially, we're going to be focusing on Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Many of you will know that Scope 1 greenhouse gas emissions imply emissions within the geographic boundary from buildings, from industry, from transport, and so on, if you like, direct emissions. And Scope 2 are the indirect emissions due to consumption of grid-supplied electricity, again, within the geographic boundary, and indirect emissions due to the consumption of heat-supplied heating and cooling within the geographic boundary. Those are the classical things. We also know that this is only accounting for a fraction of the total emissions, and the famous Scope 3 emissions, driven by things like our use of mobile phones, driven, for example, by our consumption of meat, which we import, say, from Argentina. Ultimately, the European Union, as everybody else, will need to find a way to measure and to capture and reduce these Scope 3 emissions. We are not proposing to do so within the parameters of this project by 2030. However, we have had a lot of interest expressed at ways using our missions to start testing these different ways of capturing Scope 3 emissions, because we're going to have to do so ultimately. So this is a great example, I think, of how the city's mission itself is going to innovate to help cities bring Scope 3 emissions within the boundaries of within their efforts. But once again, we will only be asking cities to make their plans for Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Once again, this is a complex area. Comprehensive information is set out in the implementation plan and will be contained in the information kit for cities, which I'll explain a little bit more of in a moment. Next slide, please. Briefly, how will it all work? This slide sets out for you our timetable for the coming months. As I just mentioned a moment ago, in October 2021, we will publish a comprehensive information kit for cities to help prepare for the call for expression of interest, which you'll see directly below that. We want to give cities as much time to think through this process up front. Around mid-November, I can't give you a precise date, we will launch the call for expression of interest, which will be addressed to cities in the form of a questionnaire. Once again, this is not where the cities are making their contracts, where they're making their commitments. It's where the city says, okay, we've looked into this new project called the climate neutral mission. We are interested in this. We think we can join this, and we are ready to apply for the Want of a Better World. The call will close around the end of January. Again, we want to give cities as much time. That's not a precise date yet. And then we'll begin the process of selecting the participating cities. Again, it'll be around 100 cities. And an important point I really want to underline here, we don't know how many cities are going to apply. If we get 200 or 300 cities coming forward with well-motivated expressions of interest to be climate neutral by 2030, and if you're meeting the other criteria, and I'll come on to those, we're not planning to say no. We want to find a way to connect all cities with the mission, even those that are not in this first group of around 100. We'll have the resource to really commit to working closely with that first group of 100 cities, but we want to keep all the other cities engaged and involved in the process. And then you see there, by mid-2022, we envisage the mission platform, which will already be up and running, helping cities with these processes. But as of by mid-2022, the mission platform will be working with the first cities to develop their climate city contracts, a process which we expect taking a number of months, maybe up to a year in some cases. Next slide, please. And then what are the assessment criteria the Commission is going to use? And here I'm listing them. These are the things we'll be looking at. The level of ambition, the level of preparedness, the existing and planned commitments, the commitment to involving citizens and stakeholders. But I want to make a very important point at this stage. It is not a beauty contest. We are not looking for the cities necessarily with the highest level of ambition, the most prepared cities, the most committed cities. We are looking, and there are the words up for you in green, we're looking for an inclusive process, we're looking for diversity, and we're looking for geographical balance. We know that there will be cities who are very motivated that are not that well prepared right now. Not everyone is like Leuven or like Copenhagen. We want you to give us the information about your levels of preparedness. We want you to tell us about your existing commitments, but we will not be picking the 100 most prepared cities. That will be easy. That will be the easy way out, but it would also mean less value added. We'll be looking for a mixture of cities with different levels of ambition and preparedness. And how's that process going to work? Well, we'll have an assessment by independent experts. At the same time, we, the European Commission, will take our responsibilities and we will validate that list. We will ultimately issue the list of the first around 100 cities. This is a point that I really want to stress because it's easy to misunderstand. We want to have cities from the north and the south, the east and the west of Europe. It's got to be a mission that looks like the European Union. That's our determination. Next slide, please. Well, I've reached the end. I've reached the end of my presentation. Here's where you can send your emails if you have follow-up questions, if you're not able to get your message through Slido today. Here, once again, is the web page. Don't feel the need to scribble it down because both of those pieces of information are included in the email that you received to confirm your participation in this. This is the place where you will be able to send your messages. Next slide, please. If you're one of those people who's hooked on social media, we'll be there. We'll be there under hashtag EU missions. That's for all the different missions. And we have our own hashtag mission cities. And EU, that's the link to our website. Sorry, the EC Europa Mission Cities is the tag for that. And that's where you can find out more. There'll be a lot more finding out more from all of us. Next slide, please. We'll be looking forward to learn more from you as we go forward. Thanks for your patience as I went through a lot of details in a short space of time. I do want to stress that it's all going to be available to you as of now in written form. I want to thank you. I want to thank you in advance for the pressure you put on us to come forward with this mission. I want to thank you for the work that lies ahead. And I can't stress enough, we look forward to working in partnership with you on this exciting mission. Thank you for your attention. I'd now like to pass, without further ado, to hear directly from our mission platform, from Thomas Osdoba, who is from EIT Climate Kick, with years of experience behind him. And Thomas is going to present you the very exciting NetZeroCities Consortium, how they're going to assist cities in practice, how you're planning to build the mission platform. Thomas, over to you.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and good morning. Hopefully the sound is working. I'd like to take just a few minutes to introduce NetZeroCities. As Matthew noted, today is officially the first day of the project. It's a 4-year project that was catalyzed by the European Green Deal and is seeking to advance climate neutral and socially innovative cities. I'm going to briefly introduce you to the project, talk a little bit about how it's structured and what the key components of it are, and then share a little bit of information about who's involved in this and how to get involved with us and follow along and work with us in the process. So,
Thomas, we're having just a moment's problem loading the slides. I think we now have them, so please go ahead.
Great, thanks. So NetZeroCities is the name of the project for the European Green Deal, and it is meant to be a supporting project and program to support the mission. If you go to the next slide, I'd like to just briefly highlight a few of the elements of this program and this project. As has been noted, first and foremost, the mission platform. The idea is to help cities by organizing and making accessible to them all, not just cities selected for the mission, but all cities in Europe, with the tools, resources, expertise, and capabilities that exist to help cities. There are numerous, multiple tools of various kinds. This is a very robust ecosystem of practitioners, of toolkits, of organizations to support city action. Our goal is to bring that all together into a platform that's easily accessible by cities, and through which cities can ask for specific help from the platform to tackle the challenges that they need in their journey towards climate neutral outcomes. In the project itself, we will be over the next several months designing this platform and pulling it together, creating an operational interface. It will start to phase in early in 2022 and be fully operational by the fall of 2022, with all of the services, all the expertise and resources organized and available. Between now and 2025, during the course of this project, we'll also be working with the Commission, the EU stakeholders, and others to determine the best service model and the ongoing sustainability of this platform so that it can endure and grow and evolve to changing needs throughout the time that cities need this kind of support, which will be for some time. The second component, also mentioned earlier, climate neutral city contracts. As noted, a number of the initial mission cities will begin working on those as soon as they've been selected, and we will move into that process. Over the next few months, we'll be preparing the initial concept of the contracts and beginning to design the elements so that we can move very quickly. We know time is of the essence, and we have to help prepare ourselves and cities to be able to look at multiple things simultaneously. Related to that, NetZeroCities includes funding to support up to 30 cities to receive significant funding for large-scale innovation-focused projects. These are really going to be designed to align with climate neutrality ambition, to explore learning, what we need to do to be able to achieve that level of performance. It will also include a program that these projects will twin with other European cities so that we can extend the reach and accelerate the learning process to help more cities in this process. And we will also be deploying city guides as partners to each of these cities with their projects to help them through the process, to help orchestrate access to the services and expertise of the platform so that they're able to make the most out of the potential of every one of these projects. Next is an impact framework to help cities around climate neutrality. There are a lot of indicators, tools, and frameworks that already exist. I think very few of them really are holistically oriented towards climate neutrality at the city scale. So we'll be pulling those together and bringing the best that we can to the impact framework for the cities in their use. Next is a learning approach So learning as part of a research project is critical and central to our efforts. We know that there is a great deal of knowledge about what needs to happen. There is less knowledge about how to do what needs to happen to achieve climate neutrality. And we will be working through peer-to-peer sharing networks to enhance the practice of how cities work and the ecosystems around each city to achieve climate neutrality in the timelines set for the mission, as well as for Europe as a whole. And then finally, policy advocacy and communications work. We know that new policies are going to be needed, some that are yet to be invented. And one of our jobs as NetZeroCities will be working with cities to be an advocate for the policy changes that are necessary to enable cities to act at scale and access the resources through or appropriately shaped markets for climate neutral outcomes. We could go to the next slide. While that's transitioning, I'll just note, as I mentioned before, doing something like a mission will require working on multiple things simultaneously, multiple projects, hopefully that interact with each other across various domains, from the built environment to how we move about in our cities, how food and other resources flow in and waste and other materials flow out. As part of NetZeroCities and the design of the platform, we are looking at world-leading expertise in a variety of service areas, from financing, social innovation, citizen engagement and governance, and systems innovation as a methodology to help cities move towards whole systemic change in a very aggressive fashion. We will be building and animating this as a community of practice and making it available through the platform. The platform itself will be designed to be easily accessible for cities and oriented towards being responsive to their needs, while also advocating for the kinds of support that's necessary for climate neutral outcomes. And at the same time, co-designing these climate neutral city contracts and working to adapt those over time as we learn more about the relationships between city, regional, national, and European governments and the key stakeholders necessary to support this kind of activity. Throughout this process, we'll be communicating widely about what we're learning and how things are working. Next slide, please. Very briefly, just introduce you to the NetZeroCities consortium partners. I know this is a long list of organizations. What we've tried to do here is two things that I'll highlight. One is recognize that building a one-stop shop of all the tools, information, resources, etc., really created for us an imperative to try to unify city network organizations and bring all of those resources and tools into a single group working together. And we've done our best to achieve that with the European city networks, and we're looking forward to how this is going to move forward. We've also identified knowledge institutions, both in the academic and the research, private research institutional mode, to help us with the needs and capabilities of research and innovation, as well as leading experts in various aspects of city climate action, so that we're bringing the best that we can identify into this process. It's also worth noting, finally, that we're also trying to be as representative and far-reaching as we can. That's not always possible as a consortium comes together in response to a bid. So we continue to look for opportunities to collaborate across all of Europe and to tap into global expertise as necessary. And while those additional organizations won't necessarily be formally part of the consortium, they will become formally part of the community of practice supporting this endeavor. And we'll look forward to reaching out to you all in that sense going forward. I think finally for the cities, one of the things we want to emphasize is that NetZeroCities is a project of the European Union and the Commission that is meant to serve the cities. We will be your advocates, we will be your champions, and we will be there to help you through this process. We know how extraordinarily difficult it is because we've been doing this work ourselves. And so we're looking forward to really building upon that as we move forward. And then the final slide is just some information about how to find us. Today's day one, so these are all new. But we have a website with a landing page. You can subscribe, so you'll get all of the information as it comes. You'll be able to reach out to us to ask specific questions. And for those inclined via social media, you'll be able to connect with us there as well. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to working with you all and learning together on this journey towards climate neutral cities. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Thomas.
Dear Matthew, you're muted.
No longer muted.
No, it's
Thank you,
okay.
Dirk. Thank you. Apologies, everyone. I thought I was unmuted. Technology is wonderful. Thank you very much indeed, Thomas, for that splendid presentation. And you see what a formidable armory we have at our disposal with the city mission, with this consortium. You have real expertise from the organizations listed there, and they will be your partners on a day-to-day basis in taking forward the mission, as well as, of course, coordinating and taking forward the research and innovation effort. One of our other great partners in this whole process up to now and in the future has been the agency we all know as CINEA, run, of course, by Dirk Beckers. And Dirk, I'd like you to say a few words too about your role in implementing the mission in terms of the calls, the mission platform and the mission board. Dirk, welcome. Thanks for joining us, and over to you.
Thank you, Matthew, and good morning to all of you. And I'm really pleased that I get this opportunity to speak and to talk about CINEA's role in the management of the city's mission. So, because in fact, we're at a historical moment now where the Commission has launched the initiative to achieve 100 climate neutral and smart cities by 2050. Of course, at CINEA, with the budget that we're managing, we're very happy to support this ambition, to support the Commission as well with the implementation of the mission, and in particular to be at your service, you, the stakeholder community. Now, as you may know, CINEA, which stands for the European Climate, Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency, is the executive agency established by the European Commission for the implementation of several financial programs that underpin in particular the European Green Deal. Now, in particular, we're implementing the Horizon Europe's collaborative research and innovation actions under the cluster concerning climate, energy and mobility, where the city's mission, of course, has a center of gravity. And in fact, we are held by external assistance, and we just started the evaluation of the first proposals that were linked to the missions submitted to Horizon Europe. We, of course, I would like to use this occasion. We've got quite some applications, so I would like to thank all of you for the, without doubt, excellent proposals that you have submitted. Now, from our side, the agency staff is committed, of course, to ensure high standards in evaluating our proposals, in preparing the grants of the proposals that will be retained, and then, of course, in managing the projects and the grants throughout their life cycle. Now, we build upon a track record of implementing climate, energy and transport projects under the Horizon 2020 program, for which we had, of course, quite some staff that was already in CINEA in the past, working on transport and energy. But then we had quite some people that moved over from EASMA who brought on the climate part with them. For instance, as a result of the last Horizon 2020 call devoted to the Green Deal, we are not only in charge of 5 large demonstration projects on greener airports and ports in major cities, but we're also supervising the new grant agreement for the mission platform NetZeroCities, which, as you've seen, has been presented just before I got the occasion to say a few words. Now, from our side, the staff here has got the experience and the technical competencies for managing projects in many of the domains where the mission will be active, such as buildings, urban mobility, planning, climate resilience. Now, over the months to come, the idea of CINEA is to support the Commission with other activities related to the city's mission. We will as well, one of our roles is to help to select the members of the new mission board, and early 2022, we will assist with the evaluation of the applications to the city's expression of interest, which will soon be launched. Now, just to finish, and I don't want to take too long because we have a busy agenda already, let me quote the architectural critic Paul Goldberger, who said that urbanism works when it creates a journey as desirable as a destination. Now, in this respect, from CINEA side, we're looking forward to working with all of you on your journey towards climate neutrality, which is extremely important. So together with the Commission, you can count on the full support of CINEA in this. And so for the time being, I would say thanks a lot for your attention, and CINEA is there to help you. Thank you. Thank you, Matthew. Yeah, you're muted again, Matthew. You still are muted. No, still not working. I see your microphone still muted.
It is up.
Now it's okay.
Okay.
Good. Can you hear me now? Testing?
Yes, we do. Yep.
Great. Thank you very much, Dirk. Technology, I love it. Thank you very much indeed for that great presentation. Dirk, you're just a great example of the huge resource we have within the Commission, which we're going to bring to bear in this thing. And thank you for all the excellent work you've done to make this happen. Dear friends and colleagues, we are overwhelmed by the number of questions we're getting in. And I'm very glad that we agreed to do this clever device of allowing you to select what are the most important questions. We have, as you've been speaking, pulled together a list of the questions that are people see most relevant. It's almost certain that we will fail to address them. I'm aided in this process, not just by Rosalinda, but also by Philippe Froissart, who I'd like to introduce, who heads up our mission team. And this will be the group of folks that we will be answering the questions for you. I'm going to have a go now, but those of you who know how we work here, they must correct me if I get things wrong, which may well be the case. I'd like to group up the questions we've received already in various ways. We've had questions around funding. I'm not surprised. We have questions around the role of the national level. Again, I'm not surprised. Questions about how our research and innovation will work in practice. Questions around the call for expression of interest, around citizens' engagement, and last but not least, the scope, if you like, of how it will apply to particular cities. I think you put your finger on the difficult areas, colleagues, and we'll do our best to answer them. I don't have all the answers now. Sometimes in the European Commission, we like to have all the answers, but I think this mission in itself will show that we have to find some of the answers as we go. So let me begin on funding with a great question from Garrett about could I elaborate on the funding portfolio? And I think other questioners have asked how we can break this down a little bit further. What is to go to cities, what will go to the mission platform, etc. Okay, so on the first point, the funding portfolio as such, the certain core part at the moment comes from Horizon Europe. And I think as Rosalind mentioned right at the start, for the years 2021 through 2023, the mission will have around 360 million euros at its disposal. We have outlined already, and we have the agreement of the Commission as to how we propose to spend that money in the first 3 years. The majority of that money will go on research and innovation projects, which will run through calls through Horizon Europe. To answer another question about what will go to the mission platform is currently going to be funded by around 50 million euros from the Horizon 2020, the previous Horizon program, and we are looking to reinforce the provision of advice through what we're calling Mission Platform 2.0 through further open calls in 2022 and 2023 to roughly another 100 million will go on that. So a big chunk of money you will see is going to go on research and innovation, and a big chunk of money is going to go on the support platform, the mission platform, which itself, of course, is going to carry out R&I projects. So that, I think, is the best way I can break it down. The 2 billion figure that Rosalinda mentions, which some of you have asked, that's the entire budget that's been set aside for the missions, for the period from, someone's trying to ring in, for the entire period from 2021 through 2027. We will get our share of that. We've been allocated an initial share for the first part, and we will be looking obviously to bid hard. We have outlined plans to spend more than 1 billion euros over the 7-year period ourselves. So I'm sorry, that 2 billion is, excuse me, I misspoke. The 2 billion is for the first 3 years. We very much hope that that will be expanded after the review period. We have plans. We have outlined plans how we could easily spend around 1 billion euros for the period until 2027, just under in Europe. Now, of course, that is a fraction of the money that will need to be spent to get cities to be climate neutral. I strongly refer you to a study done by Material Economics. It estimated that for a city of an average population size of around 100,000, the cost is more or less around 1 billion. So if we had cities of an average population size and we have 100 of them of 100,000, you can count 100 billion. You can see immediately how this will stack up, particularly if we have larger cities. For example, looking outside here at Brussels, those sums will necessarily increase. That's the funding picture. That's the planning on the funding portfolio from Horizon Europe. But of course, I want to stress, we are sure cities will be able to access programs such as the structural funds and others. And to do that, Maurice asked a question, will the 100 cities get preferential access? And this is linked to another question which somebody else asked about how the mission label will work. And these two issues are, of course, linked. We are proposing to have a mission label. This would enable the cities, both with European funds and externally, to be able to identify themselves as an accepted city under the climate neutral program. We very much hope, for example, in structural funds, that then the managing authorities will look positively at those cities with their elaborated plans for climate neutrality. They will be a logical source for those funds. What we cannot do is guarantee that preferential access. We have to follow the EU rules and regulations on this. What it will do is, if you like, it might provide additional points in the assessments of proposals from climate city neutral cities in these different processes. So that's how the mission label will work. What this mission is not equipped to do is to rip up the EU rulebook, to funnel EU funds, much as I would love to. But we are very confident with top quality plans that, and given the amount of money which is actually out there looking to establish itself, to link itself to top quality plans, that the funding from public sources will not be the problem. The vast majority, once again, will need to come from outside public funding sources, whether European, national, or regional cities themselves. And therefore, that's why we're looking at all the different ideas linked to sustainable finance. We had a question about how the blending facility would work. Well, at the moment, it's just an idea. We've had good experiences with blending facilities in the European Union, including on transport through the CEF. And this would be a neat idea to take things forward. But as we move forward, we will have discussions with the European Investment Bank and others and try to come up with divergent funding and financing models that fit the needs of all the cities involved in the program. I hope I pause there and I look to colleagues, Rosalinda, Philippe, Wibke, Bankauko, who's also here, to see if you'd like to supplement my answers to the issues around funding. No? Calling once, calling twice? No, but this will not be the end of this question. I'm sure we'll need to come back to it on many occasions. Maybe I could turn now to the role of the national level or states and their engagement in this process. Clement, you asked a question about this, and I think it's very relevant. We are not expecting cities to do this on your own. You are not atomized, left on your own to come up with a magical scheme for climate neutrality. Your city is located in a region, in a member state. And of course, it's also important not to forget the rest of the suburban, the peri-urban, the rural areas with which you connect, whether on mobility or other areas. So it's essential that the national level and the regional level are engaged from the start. We don't want to assume that it's going to happen by magic. And that's why we're funding a program with the JRC, which will launch in 2022, to specifically develop national networks. And there are plenty of good models out there, I'm sure included on this call, For example, we have representatives of the networks established in Sweden called Viable Cities, the tremendous networks being built in Spain, in Greece, in Austria, and elsewhere. And it is a combination, if you like, of national associations of cities, but building in also involvement from the governments as well, and not just from science and technology ministries, but energy ministries and transport ministries. But of course, it's a complex business. We need networks of networks in developing this. Will, somebody else has asked, will member states participate with funds and provide access to other funding? My answer is, I very much hope so. But once again, this mission is not equipped with magical powers to require member states to provide matching funds. In my view, it'll be extremely logical that that happens. Cities planning to be climate neutral by 2030 will be carrying on their backs quite a lot of the individual national efforts to be climate neutral, or indeed to reach the 55% reduction targets by 2030. So I very much hope that the national level and regional levels will support actively the cities that are taking the lead, taking the responsibility for them. We need to engage with the national authorities, but we also don't think that national authorities should have a veto over city engagement, whether through the expression of interest or indeed in the signing of the contracts. We cherish national involvement. We look forward to working with you in national governments, as I know cities do, but that's the role that we envisage, as I've tried to set out in these few words. Once again, as for all of these things, more details supplied in our implementation plans. And as we move forward, I'm sure we will start to refine these questions. Anthony, you asked a question, which I will answer now because I can answer it very briefly. When do we expect the call for expression of interest? The answer is in mid-November. I don't have a precise date, but that will be the moment we will launch this call. Cities will have around mid-October an information pack, which will help you prepare for that call for expression of interest. It'll help you start thinking about the type of things we're looking for in the call to give you maximum time. But the actual tool with which you'll be able to fill in the questionnaire will only be launched in mid-November. We will use this network, he improvised looking at his colleagues, we will use this network of people who signed up to make sure that you are connected to the information pack directly and the call for expression of interest, although both will also be published on our website. I pause again to see if colleagues, Rosalinda, wish to add anything in supplement on either of these 2 points about the state level or indeed the expression of interest. Rosalind, please go ahead.
No, Matthew, I was just giving you a thumbs up. I think you're being extremely comprehensive and complete. So I just wanted to indicate I have nothing to add at this moment. Thank you.
This is where analog meets digital. I misinterpreted her wave of the hand to be a wish to take the floor. Thank you, Rosalinda. Well, you may have something to say on the following topics relating to R&I, where you are much more expert than I am. We've had interesting questions from Maurice again and from others. The first question related to, it's a great one. Usually in EU research and innovation programs, you need a consortium from several countries in order to apply. Well, that's not the case in this process. Cities will, and we expect them to apply individually. We are sometimes asked if cities can apply together. And there's nothing to prevent, if you like, two cities that are next to each other, or indeed in a broader regional grouping like Île-de-France or others, applying as one. But what is important is the political commitment is made, that you're not taking a commitment on behalf of other authorities that won't necessarily be able to deliver. So there's no need for a consortium. Cities should feel free to apply, to reply to the call for expression of interest. We'll be looking to cities themselves, whether it is a city, if you like Paris, or a broader region like Île-de-France, to apply to be climate neutral cities in the program. But there's no consortium requirement. Maurice, you asked a really good question. Why are we focusing on research and innovation? Shouldn't we just be scaling up proven solutions? There's a lot in what you say. We know, for example, in urban mobility, a lot of those solutions exist already. We're not looking through this mission to reinvent how energy efficiency should be run or buildings should be renovated. Nonetheless, we think there is a strong innovation dimension to this mission. Firstly, there will be, I guarantee you, over the lifetime of this mission, new innovations that we want to bring into play in cities, and cities will want to incorporate in their plans. But secondly, I want you to think about innovation in a much broader sense, innovations in governance or innovations in organizations. And talking to our colleagues in the Climate Kick, they say that that's, if you like, where the innovation is most needed. It's a tough ask for, if you like, big cities who are used to having a transportation department which handles specific projects autonomously, or an energy department which handles its own work. Because with this project for climate neutrality, we need cities to be holistic and fully integrated. We need this to be a program rather than a series of projects. That in itself requires a lot of innovation. We need to innovate in how we engage with and involve citizens. And another question we were asked is how this will work in practice. It might surprise you, but the Commission is not going to dictate to cities a top-down model for how it should work. How you engage your citizens in Gothenburg is going to be very different from how you do it in Bucharest or in Napoli. That process will very much depend on you. The requirement, if I can put it that way, is on you to find a way to engage with the citizens. It's not an optional extra. And we're not doing that because we have some high-level, highfalutin democracy objective. We're doing it because it will be the only way to ensure that the sustainable policies you adopt for climate neutrality are truly sustained over the lifetime of this mission and beyond. And if you talk to mayors, if you talk to the mayor of Leuven, who I had the honor to speak to yesterday, they couldn't have got to their plans, let alone their implementation, without a strong engagement of citizens. So that's a rather blithe answer to the question. We will, and this is the fascinating, exciting part about this mission, through the engagement with the mission platform, working with the consortium, and they have genuine experts with great experience in citizen engagement, we will evolve both different practices in cities. We will also evolve different models which other cities can follow, I hope, in the future. And I think that's one of the most exciting parts of this whole business. I pause again to take a sip of water and to ask Rosalind if she'd like to chip in. She's being very polite. Okay, well then I plow on to questions around scope, which are my last on my list at the moment. And I look to my colleagues to see if there are other questions, and indeed there are coming in, which you'd like us to tackle. First question, and I'm sorry, I haven't written down who this is from, so apologies. Is the whole city commitment, where we're looking for whole cities to apply, is it realistic? And where we say that you don't have to apply as the whole city, you remember I said that a city might exclude a district or a source of emissions. How will that be, as I put it, duly justified? Well, it's a good question. Is it realistic? We will see. The cities that are currently pledged to be climate neutral are doing so as whole cities. So there is a precedent for that. Obviously, from the objective of meeting the European Green Deal targets, the more of a city that does it, the better, and the bigger the city, the better in that sense. And again, going back to the previous point I made about innovations in governance, for a city to do it as a whole is itself an essential thing we need to learn how that can and should be done. Nonetheless, we've built ourselves this flexibility because we think it's necessary talking to different cities. Just to use an example I've used many times, and this is not to presuppose that Rotterdam will express its interest. Rotterdam has within its city borders the largest port in Europe, and Rotterdam cannot therefore take responsibility for the whole port, at least by 2030, as I understand it. And so we do need to, that's a rather obvious example, but it may be that perhaps a city to the south and east of Europe with less of a history of climate neutrality, with less preparation under its belt, wishes to come forward with a plan for less than the whole of a city. It may be necessary to ensure the diversity, in other words, of our overall mission to make sure that we have a representative group of cities involved. I don't have any hard and fast rules that we've set down for duly justified exceptions. I very much expect that we will have a number of cities that are not participating for their entire geographic scope. But I also hope that we'll have the majority of the cities, or a very large number of them, will be committing the whole city to climate neutrality by 2030. A question about the limit at 100 cities. And I recognize that can be a little confusing the way we've described it, and I'll take a moment to unpack that. I mean, firstly, I think the label, I didn't choose it, so I think I can say this. The label of 100 climate neutral cities is a powerful statement in itself. If you talk to people on the street, people get it. Oh yeah, okay, 100 climate neutral cities. Yeah, all right, that's cool. When it comes to practicalities, we may end up with, in the program, a few more cities than 100, a few less. It will largely depend on our ability to offer resources to accompany cities through this process, which will essentially be delivered through the mission platform, but also looking at the scope for matching R&I projects through the mainstream Horizon Europe work program. As we set that out, we will therefore choose around 100 cities by March on our timetable, and that will be publicly announced. We have funding under the mission platform, which I mentioned at the start of this question and answer session, the 50 million through the Horizon 2020, to manage, as Thomas put it, between 25 and 30 cities in the first wave. These will be the first group of cities off the rank, if you like, that will start their work to prepare climate neutral cities. We will also be launching a call for Mission Platform 2.0, which will provide the support for the next group of cities, the remaining 75 cities in the first group of 100. So we'll be starting the active work only with around 25 to 30 in that first year. I should say at this point, to be proper and legally correct, there's no guarantee that the NetZeroCities Consortium will form Mission 2.0. It'll be another open call under our tried and tested procedures. And I can't even speak for NetZeroCities whether they're going to bid for it. So, but to be very clear, they'll be running the mission platform for the first year, and then we'll see what happens in relation to the subsequent iterations of the mission platform. Question about why not smaller cities as well? I think this was Maurice again. I think you've asked lots of questions, Maurice. Look, we're not against smaller cities being climate neutral. I couldn't underline that more strongly. We're all going to need to be climate neutral by 2050. Nonetheless, after a lot of discussion, we think that we have if you like, a soft cutoff at 50,000 and a hard cutoff at 10, the way we're working this. So we're not proposing to have cities of smaller than 10,000 in the program. We think that above that, particularly above 50,000, there will be a number of common characteristics, organizational governance characteristics, which we can tackle within this program. Below 10,000, it becomes more a question of capacity, nonetheless valid, but it's not something we're planning to tackle inside this mission. Again, as with everything else in this mission, these are things we can review as we go along. If this mission succeeds, like I hope it will, maybe by 2025, we're broadening the scope. I don't know. There's no hard and fast answers that I think I can give to this question. These are after a lot of discussion with partners, these are the parameters we've chosen for the moment. And these are the parameters which will be in the call for expression of interest. I'm talking a lot. I hope I'm being sufficiently clear. Please feel free to come back with follow-up questions, particularly if I haven't been clear. But in the meantime, perhaps I could give the floor, not least to introduce you to him, if you don't know him already, to Philippe Froissart to say a word about the work program. And masters of the technology, if you can find a way to connect Philippe up, that would be great. Here he is. Philippe, over to you.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you, Matthew, for giving me the possibility to say a few words indeed. Can you hear me?
Yes.
We seem to have, I'm getting a message. I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, I can hear you.
Philippe, we seem to have bandwidth issues, which is not an issue I normally associate with you because you have enormous bandwidth. But maybe if you can speak without your camera, that would be great.
Okay, I will do that. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, very good. So it's obviously my camera that is playing up and causing problem. No, I just wanted to come back to the point that was made on the consortium and whether or not cities should apply as a consortium with other cities or not. I think we have to make the distinction between two processes here. The fact that there is the call for expression of interest where cities apply by themselves alone, and that will lead actually to a selection that will allow them to receive dedicated support from the Mission platform. And the opportunities that are made available to the cities through the calls and topics that we will be launching in the work program 21-22 and beyond for Horizon Europe. And there, in that case, when cities want to apply to these topics, they have to respect the rules and conditions of the work program. And very often there are some requirements as regard the number of participants. And the number of cities when we want to specify that indeed we want to have a core group of cities participating in these projects. And so I invite the city authority, the local authorities to look very carefully at the conditions that are laid down in the work program to make sure that indeed they respect the minimum conditions and criteria for the preparation of those proposals. So these are really the issues that are important to notice. The fact that there is a call for expression of interest where cities apply by themselves is not a pre-requirement or a prerequisite to be eligible for participating in calls and topics in the work program. They still have to respect the conditions for the applications of these topics and calls of the work program. I think that's all I wanted to say on that in that context, and maybe to say that we are still working on this amendment of the work program 21-22 for identifying a number of dedicated topics that will respond to the needs of the cities that will participate in the call for expression of interest, that will commit to the objective of the mission. And those calls and topics will actually be published at the end of the year in December. And the cities will have the opportunity to see the whole range of opportunities that are made available to them in various domains like urban mobility, like energy, like urban planning, and so on. So I think that's all I can say.
Philippe, thank you very much. That was brilliant. And it's good to introduce you because you're going to be the rock, and you and your team are inside the commission on how we're going to move forward. Don't shake your head because we need you. Thank you very much. Perhaps I could just briefly ask Thomas Osdoba in particular. I've been talking about a lot of issues affecting you in the consortium. Would you like to contribute anything at this stage, including to give your view on things I've said?
Thanks, Matthew. I mean, I think very briefly, because a lot of these things cascade into real conversations. And so this is really a starting point, and we'll be looking forward to following up with those who are asking questions. I think we're trying to capture all those questions and who's asked them so we can follow up. But I think just a couple of maybe quick comments to add to the discussion so far. I think from our perspective, we want to, and we've been working with cities for quite some time on climate neutral strategies and programs. I think it's important to take seriously what a mission is. And the logic that underlies a mission. I think we all know we have a shared outcome. We all know that there's a lot of knowledge already about what to do in support of that outcome, but I don't think any one person knows everything about what is needed and how to do what's necessary. And I think this speaks, to the inherent tension that exists between let's just do everything we know how to do now as fast as possible, while also needing to invest in learning about the things that we don't know how to do, particularly if they're too politically challenging to take on. And so it's always easy to fall into a trap of looking at, let's just use proven solutions. Proven solutions will not achieve climate neutrality in cities by 2030. We need to figure out how to deploy them faster in better ways and we need to bring new additional techniques, technologies, solutions, services alongside. Those could simply be innovations in governance and policy that allow things to scale more quickly. But the fact that proven solutions aren't scaling rapidly now, the way that we need them to achieve this target, suggests we've got some things to learn. And I think that really is fundamental to the concept of a mission. If we knew how to do all of this stuff, we would be doing something different. We know that there are many things we already can do if we are willing to invest together, but we also know we need to learn. So I just wanted to add that very briefly. And I think the platform itself will be evolving in response to how we begin to do this work with the cities. And so I think we'll be able to, in real time, embrace the kind of challenge and tension that goes along with, let's do what we already know how to do, with what do we need to learn how to do, and to do those things simultaneously. So I'll pause there, see if there's some more questions we want to get to.
Thank you, Thomas. I'm glad I gave you the floor, because that was an extremely wise and articulate expression of what I was trying to convey. It's a lot better than I managed. You beautifully conveyed the essence of what this mission is about, a joint learning experience. And as you beautifully put it, if we knew how to do it, we'd be doing it already, because I think we all know the scope, the scope and scale of the existential challenge. And you mentioned not just the innovations in governance and policy, but the innovations in order to ensure replicability and scalability. And I think these are the things we're very interested in tackling. Thank you very much indeed. Jump in again if you'd like to. Colleagues, we announced this webinar to conclude at 11:30. I'm told we can continue to 12 o'clock. I know that's a sneaky trick to pull on you if you have to leave, but there's so many questions coming in. We would like, with your forbearance, to continue. Once again, this webinar is being recorded, and all the questions will be answered transparently. So if you do have to leave us now, you won't miss out on the discussion. So if I may continue with a few more of the questions we've got. A question which is really, we've been scratching our head out, and I think we found a way through, is from the perspective of a city, there are so many great programs already, including at the European level, and including centered around actions towards climate neutrality. For example, mentioned in the question, I forget who it was from, I'm sorry, is the Covenant of Mayors. Isn't that good enough? Well, look, I'm a huge supporter of the Covenant of the Mayors program. I need to be, because it's an official Commission program, but it's great. And we have colleagues from the Covenant of Mayors working directly in our small core team here. I see a strong synergy between the Covenant of Mayors program, which has reached out to a large number of cities and towns across the EU, and is working with them on plans to reduce climate emissions by a certain date against a baseline. But the guys in the Covenant of Mayors will be the first to say that their explicit goal for each of their cities and towns is not climate neutrality. So if you like, we are a graduation class of the Covenant of Mayors, cities that are already doing a lot in the Covenant of Mayors and are ready for a stepped up program, including the engagement with the mission platform in order to take that next step towards climate neutrality. It's a difficult step. That last 10, 20, 30% of emissions are often the most expensive to get at, not least because, of course, they start to touch on individual behaviors, and they're also politically difficult. So I picked on the example of the Covenant of Mayors as just one example. There are so many other great programs out there. As a mission, we want to work with them, and as far as possible, not to duplicate them or replicate them, or indeed, we couldn't possibly reduce their need to exist. But we do want to reduce the complications for cities. So if you work with us in the cities mission, we will hopefully help you find a way through, whether it's to the zero pollution guys over in DG Environment, the Climate Pact team will be working very closely with in DG Klima, and all the variations on smart cities and living in the EU. We'll be working with all of these programs. Hopefully, one-stop shop is an overused phrase, but hopefully providing you with avenues to all of them without you filling in 15 different online forms every week. I'd like to come back to the selection question. How do we pick the cities? Because we've had a number of questions on that. A simple question, but it's important to answer it. Are we expecting a minimum number of cities from each member state? Well, the strict answer to that question is no. We don't have a minimum number in our mind because firstly, we don't know who's going to apply. But we do want, I certainly do want to see cities involved from each member state of the European Union. And in particular, we reserve our right if we have an underrepresentation from member states or indeed particular regions of Europe to, if necessary, organize follow-up calls for expression of interest. Because it's very important that this mission looks like Europe. It has to be representative of Europe. We need to address this complex question of climate neutrality from the perspective of all parts of Europe. So the answer is no, no minimum, but we're going to be pushing hard to make sure we have cities from every member state. What type of questions will be in the expression of interest? I refer you back to the presentation I made. I'm not surprised that not all of it is sinking in because there's a lot there. If I can find my point in my presentation here. Excuse me a second. So I'll find the page. Sometimes it's good to prepare these things in advance. Yes, the type of questions will center in 4 areas: the city's level of ambition, the city's levels of preparedness, city's existing and planned commitments to climate neutrality, and the city's commitment to involving citizens and stakeholders. I know that's not answering your question about what precise questions will be in the EOI. You will learn more when you see the info pack, because we'll start to unpack in the info pack the detailed questions you will get. But I do want to underline a point, sorry for repeating it, but I think it's really important that please don't feel that if your city has not done the most climate neutrality actions up to now, if you don't feel as prepared as Copenhagen or Leuven or others, if you haven't got existing or planned commitments to climate neutrality, please don't feel that you're excluded from this process. Because once again, we're looking for a diverse mission involving cities of all shapes and sizes and readiness. Those are the questions I have for the moment. Maybe anything else burning? This is a good one, maybe to start to sort of edge towards a conclusion. What exactly will be the added value for cities? That's a very precise and profound question, which I'll be able to answer accurately when I look backwards over the first 2 or 3 years. It goes to the question of why we think we need a specific mission for climate neutrality. I think and I'd like to hear Thomas's views on this, the answer lies in 3 areas. Firstly, it lies in the difficulty of the actual challenge to actually get to climate neutrality, particularly for a whole city, whether it's a city of 100,000 or a city of 10 million. It is a complex technical, political, economic, and administrative task. We're not wishing to undermine it. Cities that have tried to explore it already have, according to them, learned as much by their mistakes as they've learned from their steps forward. The mission is a chance to learn together, to put in place solutions that have been learned elsewhere by twinning, by mentoring, from learning for each other. And also, we profoundly believe that the cities involved in this will get early access to additional resource from the European and other levels to get a rocket booster for their efforts. Cities will gain political recognition for their efforts. Cities will be taking a major step forward for their own member states and carrying climate emission reductions on their back. And ultimately, cities that realize this golden ambition of climate neutrality will reap the co-benefits. They will smell the clean air, as we all had during the COVID lockdown. They will have it on a permanent basis. They will experience the less congestion. They will get the lower energy bills that will come with greater energy efficiency and use of renewable sources of energy. They will experience the improved waste and water treatment that will come with the climate neutrality of those operations. I don't think I can be more precise than that, except to ask the cities that are planning and have taken major steps towards neutrality to say for themselves what benefits they've received. But that's what I expect to see, and that's why I'm hearing the excitement from cities about their willingness to sign up to this program. Thomas, you've been doing this for many years. What's your answer to that question?
Well, it is a good question. I'll say briefly, I think 3 quick points on that. I think one is that the fastest way to both determine, for a city to determine for itself the value add, as well as for us collectively to have a conversation of what is in it for cities, what's the value to the cities, is for cities to engage now before the expression of interest is out and start the conversation around what is going to be delivered through both NetZeroCities and the implementation plan of the mission, and begin to explore that. So that'd be the first thing. I think the second is to recognize that if we do our jobs well, the expertise and the capabilities and the resources available to cities who come into the mission and who participate through NetZeroCities with the contracts and the pilots, et cetera, will receive a level of expertise and capabilities that almost no city could afford on their own. And included within that is a fully focused effort to help each city identify the full capital needs that they're going to have, not just for a project, but for all the projects that would be necessary to achieve climate neutrality, so that we can begin working on that. We know how important that is. And then I think finally, the third point I'd make, and apologies for piling on here, but we've been working very closely with Leuven for the last 3 years, and I would just observe, Leuven was selected last year as Europe's capital of innovation. And if you talk to the mayor of Leuven or the leader of Leuven 2030, they will talk about the value of this mission and the work that we've been doing over the last 3 years, and say it makes all the difference in them understanding how they can achieve their objectives. And they've got a very ambitious roadmap, but they still are trying to figure out how to implement it fully. They don't have all the resources they need. They don't have all the capabilities they need. And they know that they don't have all of the solutions that their roadmap implies. So there's a lot to learn from the cities who've already been engaging in this conversation, whether through existing programs from any one of the city network organizations that's been supporting cities on climate neutral strategies. But I think the shortest answer is the cities who've been really taking on climate neutrality the most seriously will say they need help. And this is what this program, this is what the mission is for.
I think that's a great point. In fact, my immediate thought for a follow-up discussion for cities that are thinking about it would be to organize a little panel, perhaps, of cities that have already got their existing plans. Why we did it, what the value it added is, the lessons we've learned, and last but not least, hopefully, why they would consider this mission to be to have been very important when they set out on their journeys, and why this mission can be important to them as they continue to move forward. I don't want to put words in their mouths from private discussions I've had with cities like Leuven and Copenhagen, but they, at least, I don't think would regard the job as done and mission accomplished as far as climate neutrality would go. I think they would still acknowledge very significant challenges, and I hope and expect that they will want to work with the mission in that respect. But again, I'm not speaking for them. Thank you, Thomas, for those very wise thoughts. And again, the expertise in the consortium that you bring together, I think, is going to be a huge part of the answer to that question. We are getting a lot more questions. I think I'm running the risk of starting to repeat myself. And when I do that, it's even worse when you hear me for the first time. What I think we can do is make sure that we are addressing precisely your questions in written form. I want you to feel free, and this is the spirit of the mission, to come back and to disagree, to say you didn't answer my question, that's not precise enough, we need more information. We also invite you to disagree with what you've heard today. If you think we've got any element of this badly wrong, we need to hear from you, because we are going to be dependent on a strong response from cities. I may have made a rod for my own back in that. There'll be some parameters we can adjust and some parameters we can't. but it is the spirit of this mission that we need to be open to hear your questions and comments as we move forward. I think, therefore, we should start to edge toward a conclusion. Perhaps I can quickly ask the other colleagues who contributed so well to this webinar, to Rosalinde, to Philippe, Thomas, if you'd like to take the floor. And then if in a minute, I'd like to give the floor to Hanna, who kicked us all off with the mission board report, to say a few words. But just quickly, Philippe, Rosalinde, Thomas, any words you'd like to add at this stage?
So can I?
We'll come to you in just a moment, Hanna, if we may. Thank you.
If I may,
Philippe.
Matthew,
Yes.
just a point, because actually today was very important and very interesting meeting. We have had a lot of questions. We have had the opportunity, you have had the opportunity to present in depth the scope and objective of the mission, but we should also mention that this event is not a standalone event. It's the first of a series of events that we would like to organize in the next few months on the way to the launch of the call for association of interest. So that means that there will be other opportunities in the foreseeable future for cities and stakeholders interested in the objective of the mission to exchange with us. And we will use, in any case, our website to put as much information as possible. As you said, we are collecting the questions that have been posted on Slido, and we will group them and provide answers like if we were preparing frequently asked questions to the attention of the organizations, the stakeholders, the citizens, the city authorities that have an interest in the objective of the mission. And we will use that as a repository of information that the stakeholders will be able to use when preparing their application for the call for association of interest. So it's just the beginning.
It is indeed just the beginning of these processes, and thank you for those thoughts, Philippe. Rosalinde, Thomas?
Yes, thank you so much. And I think also the amount of questions shows the huge interest and enthusiasm that still exists for the city mission. An important milestone today, and as Philippe said, just the beginning of the continuation of our journey. And I think what I think is very important is something, Matthew, that you underlined as well, that eventually, what we are doing this for is really to deliver concrete results for the citizens in European Union that live in the cities. And I think it also fits extremely well with the policy of the Commission with the Green Deal, that we have taken really European leadership and that we want to become the first climate neutral continent by 2050. I also think that the cities mission will also be an inspiration for cities across the globe. I also think the cities mission has an opportunity to link up with international activities that exist to support cities and become climate neutral. And this way, I think we are really on the right path and on the right track for 2050. So again, just want to thank everybody and to underline that we continue to be here in the journey together with you on the road to climate neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalind. Very well put. Thomas, some farewell words?
Just add, we're here to help, and our contact information is going to be available if you didn't get a chance to write it down, but reach out. I think, as Philippe noted, between now and the expression of interest being released, as well as the deadline, I would encourage as much conversation as possible, individually or collectively as groups of cities, to share perspectives, raise questions, and continue to discuss as we have today, because that's critical to making good informed decisions. This is a hugely ambitious program. It's going to require a lot of effort from all people, but it's important also to note from the city perspective, and I've worked with cities and for cities, we're here to help you, and so you should feel supported in this journey. So thanks again.
I remind you, Thomas, that it's your former president, Ronald Reagan, who said that the scariest phrase in the English language is, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." But luckily, you're not from the government. Joking aside, I think that's exactly the right philosophy that we take forward. And thank you for those words. And last but not least, I wanted to give you the moment, Hanna. You, as chairman of the mission board, you started us on this journey, and we're proud to be carrying forward the flame on your behalf. Would you like to comment on anything that you've heard? And it gives me the chance to say once again to you and the members of the board to thank you very much. Hanna.
Yes, I would like simply to encourage, cities to be enough brave and to try to be in dialogue with us. I mean, with you, with the commission, with these people who are experts, because I'm afraid that, but maybe not I'm afraid, but I would like to show that there is the possibility different than the previous projects, as I mentioned already, and they should be more active in this process of being one of the 100 European cities who is climate neutral. So I simply wanted to encourage to be active also in our field, because we need different cities, we need different experience. We, of course, we learn both, because it's a completely new instrument, I would say. But we have to build it together, because the goal is very important. The goal is very important politically. It's within the goal of the EU as such, as a whole, and it's important for our citizens, as Rosalinda mentioned. Thank you.
Thank you, Hanna, for those words and for everything you've done. And dear friends and colleagues, let me draw this discussion to a close. I'd like to thank the COVID epidemic for one thing alone, which is, had we tried to have such a discussion 2 years ago, we'd have had to organize a huge conference, book the biggest conference hall in Brussels for well over 1,000 people, and we've been able to do this efficiently in terms of exchanging online. Of course, it's not the same as meeting in person, but we will now try to compensate that by really addressing all the points that you've raised with us, both now and in the future. I won't repeat myself, or I won't try to match the eloquence of others in closing this, except to tell you a story. When we launched the 5 missions earlier this week, in the process that Rosalinda mentions with this excellent communication, a colleague not in the mission team said, "That's it, you've done it. It's over, we've finished."
It's the beginning.
This, as everyone has said, is just the start. We look forward to working with each and every one of you on this exciting journey. Thanks for your attention today. Thanks for all the work we're going to do together in the future. Good morning to everybody.